everyone. Happy Sunday afternoon. Welcome to an impromptu live stream here at the Jayda and Stitches show. We are going to revisit our November square, our fluted granny square. We're going to do a little Q&A on it. We're going to do a little work as we go kind of together. And we're going to troubleshoot because I was going through the comments and I noticed that kind of like our Jacob's Ladder granny square back in March, there were a lot more questions and just sort of some, you know, just general question marks hanging over the square, and you know, people were kind of timidly asking about substitutions. Like I said, I think back at the beginning, you can at any time use any square anywhere you want to in this blanket. So we do have 3 other squares that suit the rest of the squares in this series that we've already got on the channel. That's our solid double crochet granny square, our solid colored classic granny square, and our V-stitch granny square. And we typically have those links included in the description box of most of our videos, just in case you want to kind of put in some filler squares. You can repeat squares that we've done so far this year, so you don't have to do them all. They aren't necessarily all to everybody's taste. The whole point of this year's blanket was to just kind of become familiar or introduced to some different kinds of granny squares. And if this one, I know a couple of you said that, oh my gosh, that's a lot of yarn, I don't know that I want to play yarn chicken. That's okay too. But for anybody who had some questions or was having some trouble with the actual granny square, I thought we should probably take the opportunity to go through it together. And if you've got questions, then please feel free to pop them into the chat. And I'm going to be able to sort of help deal with them in real time. So I'm also going to start making one as we go. I've got a couple of festive colors here. I'm going to try making one in 2 very different colors that should stand out from the background. So you should be able to see the red and you should be able to see the green fairly well. And like I said, I'm going to do my very best to keep an eye on the chat and answer questions as they come up. Mr. InStitches is kind of puppy sitting today. We were hoping she would go down for a nap, but she's being rather difficult. We do have a new diva puppy. She thinks the whole universe belongs to her. And getting her to lie down for a nap isn't always easy. So I hope you bear with me as I try to kind of do a little bit of everything. I'm going to monitor the chat as best I can. I'm going to answer some questions, and we're going to make one of these fluted granny squares together. Hello, Kevin. Kevin popping into the chat with a membership milestone. Thank you, Kevin. Kevin's been a member for 8 months. Says, hey, Jayda and everyone. And I second that. Hey, everybody. All right. So here we go. I've got my hook. This is the one that I've had throughout the whole year. It's my 5.5 millimeter, also known as an I or a 9. It's the one I've been using, but whatever hook you've been using, I would recommend sticking along with that. Pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and I've got my 4 stitch markers. I always recommend putting a stitch marker on each of the chain 2 corners because it really does help keep track of things, especially with this particular square, because this square is our 2-pass square. So every row has 2 passes, and that can get to be a little bit confusing. You've got the base mesh that we're building, and then we're doing the 3-dimensional fluted stuff on top. Quick question from Rebecca. Where can we go to pick up patterns from you? We've got an Etsy shop. The Etsy shop link should be in the description box. Mr. InStitches is a bit busy, so he can't necessarily just tuck it in there, but it should be in the description box. If you click on the title of the video, then it should open the description box and you'll see the link to our Etsy shop, and that is where most of our patterns are. We also have free patterns available on our pattern workshop page on our website, and that link should be in the description box somewhere as well. So both those links are there. Thank you for asking. And Rose is saying, yep, she gave up on this one. Yeah, it's a very busy square. It's a yarn eater. It's a really good one. And once you get the hang of it, it's a nice one to kind of keep in your repertoire, your library for big stash busting projects. And like I was saying, I think this would look really amazing as like the main part of the front of a bag. If you made like a really big one, obviously you'd want to line it because it's a mesh base, but I love how that looks. So I think it would look really cool as a bag. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to get my scissors and my yarn needle out of the way. And Anna Victoria says, if you made it all in green, it would look like lettuce. You're right. It really would. Someone else made them in very flowery colors. It looks like a chrysanthemum. There's something about that fluted, waving, undulating, rippling look that you get with that second pass on every row. I'm going to start with my red because I feel like that's nice and bright. Thanks all for being here this afternoon. I hope we can be helpful and provide a little bit of company and entertainment on a Sunday afternoon. That's always nice too. All right, so this is how we begin. Once you've got your yarn and your hook and everything put together, we start with a slip knot and we chain 5. We want to make a ring, so we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first chain. And this is kind of like how they're all built to start, most of them anyway. So we've got our little chained ring, and we're going to start with the mesh stitch. So right off the bat, we're going to chain 4 to begin. The chain 4 counts as a double crochet. That's the first 3 chains, and then a chain 1. So chain 4 at the beginning of the first pass of each row counts as double crochet, chain 1. Then you're going to double crochet into the circle, so the little chained ring that you made, and that's side 1. Basically it's like a V-stitch. Chain 4 double crochet counts as a double crochet, chain 1 double crochet. Hi Sarah! Sarah's here in the chat with member for 12 months. Thank you so much. With membership milestone, says, hey there Jayda and Mr. Congrats on your new puppy. Thank you. She's a handful. She's a handful, but we love her. Okay, we chain 2. Chain 2 is always the corner space, and that is the same throughout all of the squares in the series. And then to finish off pass 1 of row 1, we're going to go double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And before I go any further, because this starts to get a little bit complicated, or at least the first row I feel can get difficult to see. You've got all these chain spaces. I'm putting my stitch marker on the chain 2 space, so it's right there, and now I can clearly see my chain 4 double crochet that began. There's my chain 2 space, and then double crochet, chain 1 double crochet. That's side 1, side 2. I'm going to chain 2. That's the new corner, and before I put a stitch marker on it, I'm going to do the double crochet, chain 1 double crochet into the chain ring. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. I'm going to pause. It's still easy for me to see that chain 2 space. So there's my stitch marker now clearly marking the next chain 2 space. Chain 2. And before I mark that, I'm going to do the last side, which is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. I'm going to pause, put my stitch marker into that chain 2 space, and then I need to create my last chain 2 space. I'm going to find the chain 4 that began the row, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's my chain 4. I count up 1, 2, 3, and I'm joining with a slip stitch to the 3rd chain, and I'm putting my stitch marker into that last chain 2 space. So here's a good little place to pause. I take my 4 stitch markers and I just kind of gently pull out on them, and you should see the square there. So there's double crochet, chain 1, double crochet on each side, and 4 chain 2 corners. So kind of like a V-stitch. This is how our V-stitch granny square starts. But we're creating a mesh because we want to be able to build the 3-dimensional fluted bit on top of that base. So this is the base. This is pass 1, row 1. That creates the base onto, so that's sort of the background of it. That creates the mesh base onto which we build our 3-dimensional flutedness. And here we go. So we don't do anything like snipping our yarn or slip stitching, nothing like that. We've joined pass 1 with a slip stitch in the 3rd chain of the chain 4. And now we jump into second pass of the first row. So there's first pass, second pass in every row. We've just completed pass 1, or the first pass of row 1. And now we're going to do the second pass of row 1. So we're going to chain 3. Now the chain 3 at the beginning of every second pass, doesn't matter what row you're on, always counts as a double crochet, and it will actually sit upright. So even though you've just chained it in this direction, it will sit upright very shortly. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify those chain 3, that chain 3 that we joined in the top of just a moment ago. It's sitting right below that chain 3 you just made. So it's this post here, and we're going to double crochet around it twice. I find it's easiest to just kind of pick it up and hold it with my thumb and forefinger so I can really see it. And then I'm just going to work 2 double crochets around it. I slip my hook right underneath it, double crochet, and do it again. And I'm heading down the length of that post towards the center of my square. So if I just kind of pause and pull out my 4 corners again, now you're going to see that because I'm working around that post of that stitch, everything's starting to stand upright. Every double crochet post gets 3 double crochet built around it. Every single post, every single row. So we're working on top of the mesh base, which was pass 1, to build pass 2, which is the 3-dimensional vertical standing fluted double crochet stuff. So what's the next stitch? The next stitch on row 1 pass 1 is this one right here. We double crocheted heading towards the center. So I'm just going to grab that post. Now I'm going to be going in the other direction. So all I want to do is just grab that post. Make sure I've really got like my fingers on it. I've isolated it. You see how you can just literally make it a big space all on its own? I just hang on to it. And then I make sure my hook goes right underneath it. And I'm working 3 double crochet into that same place. So I just hold it and double crochet around that post 3 times. And now I'm going away from the center of the square and back out towards the edge. And once I've worked 3 double crochet around it, now those double crochets stand upright. Now remember, this is the first row, so things are a little small. It'll be much easier to see going forward. But if I lay it flat again and I pull out those 4 corners from pass number 1, now you can really see that we've got 3-dimensional stitches standing upright. So there's my 4 corners, and I've worked double crochets around those stitches, and you can see that right there. Hello, hello, hello. I'm so glad you guys could all make it. I'm going to do my very best to keep an eye on the chat here. Hi, Carol. Carol's in the house. Thank you, Carol. Carol's been a member for 71 months. My goodness, thank you so much. Carol, with a membership milestone, says, the grabbing and turning was what slowed me down so much doing this block. Actually, I did 4 of them, and they turned out well, though. Yes, I've seen them. They're gorgeous. You did. I love the way yours turned out. It does slow you down. Some squares are quicker than others. I'm going to say that the December square definitely moves faster than this one. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to give it away, but it moves a lot quicker than this one. But there are still some stitches that might kind of make you pause. Nothing difficult, of course. It's just, I'd say the fastest granny square we've done so far this year was the summer mesh stitch. It's the summer mesh granny upon which this one is built. But when you're just doing double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, like all around and around and around, you just fly through that square. So that's the base of every row of this square. It's just the double crochets that we build around it. And I feel like as you work, you kind of get a little more, like you kind of find a way that's natural to you to move on to the next post. So for example, I've just finished this one. I'm going to be crocheting back towards the center, but most importantly, I want to find the next post. Well, that's this one right here. I'm skipping over the chain 2 space. I'm not paying any attention to the chain 2 spaces for the second pass, but I want to keep my stitch marker there just so it's there for when I go and build pass 1 on row 2. So you leave your stitch markers in place. You just skip over it for now, find the next post. That's it right there. And then I'm just going to get my fingers around it. So I'm just going to isolate it, and I'm going to work 3 double crochet around it, get my hook right underneath it. And like I said, this is the first row, so things are a little bit small, but it's good practice. 3 double crochet, and I was heading towards the center. There's the next post right here, so I pick it up, and I just isolate it with my fingers, make sure I can see that nice big space, and then I'm moving away from the center, and I just poke my hook right underneath it, and I'm just going to hang on to it. Once you get that first double crochet in, the next 2 are pretty easy. And 3 double crochet around that going away from the center. Hey everyone, I'm so glad so many of you could make it today. Lucy says, hi Jayda, I did one in the round and it was time consuming but well worth it. I loved it. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I really like this square. It's a little different, and like I said, it's a yarn eater. It's a little more time intensive, but the results are so cool, and this is such a nice, I love textured, like we can do so much cool three-dimensional work with crochet. Crochet really lets us go outside the lines, you know, if you were thinking of it like a coloring book, and I really love being able to play into that. So the texture that you can create with crochet, I just love it. And this one just has such a nice feel to it. That's why we had to include it, because I like fluted stuff. I like the sort of three-dimensional grannies, and I'd say that the thickest three-dimensional granny we did this year was the Irish Rose, and this is probably the second most textured one. All right, so all we want to do after we finish the 3 double crochet down the other one is just kind of look for the next stitch. Here it is here. That's a chain 2 corner space. Easy to see because I marked it. I'm skipping over it. That's the next post. I just went away from the center, and I can tell because my last double crochet is right at the edge of the square, which means that now I want to go back towards the center. But you find yourself doing this, like kind of in and out and in and out. So you just naturally have to, like, once you grab that next post and you isolate it and just sort of tug on my yarn a little bit, and I like to just get my hook under it. Once I get my hook under it for the first double crochet, I feel like now that I've pulled up on it, I've made that space easier to see. So it's just the first of those 3 double crochets that maybe takes a little bit of posturing. There's 3. And now I want to do 3 double crochet around the next stitch. There it is there. It's right next to the next corner. And so I'm going to grab it. I'm just going to stick my finger under it, isolate it so I can sort of see the space. Don't be afraid to be rough with your square too. Get my hook underneath that post and just get that first double crochet in. And now I've got a really easy to see space. Oh my gosh, Vicky's doing 16 squares, 4 of each color. Ooh, wow. Hello, 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 everybody. Did someone say they were having some trouble here? Don't mind me, everyone. I'm doing my best to kind of keep an eye on the... Oh, how do you join the channel? Oh, hey, Nona, Sewing with Nona. If you want to, there's 2 things. You can subscribe. If you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. A lot of folks watch and aren't subscribed, and if you are subscribed, you're more likely to be handed our videos when they arrive in your home feed, but they will always be in your subscription feed. So if you ever want to catch up and see what we're up to, you can always click on your subscription feed. And if you want to join the channel, joining the channel as a family member helps support us, which we really appreciate. And there should be a big join button underneath the video. And if you click on that, it'll tell you all you need to know about all the different parts of membership that are available here on the channel. And a big thank you to all of our family members. So here we go. I've got 2 more posts left to work around, and that will complete the second pass of row 1. So here's another corner. Once again, easy to see because there's my big stitch marker on it. I finished my last double crochet. It was against the edge, and I can tell because it's right against the edge of the square, which means that I will be going back towards the center. I want to find the next post. Here it is. I'm just going to grab it with my thumb and forefinger. And all I want to do is just get my hook under it for that first double crochet. And then I feel like it's easier to work the next 2. I just hold on to it though. I hold on to it and I can slip my hook under it 3 times, get 3 double crochet around it. And now, again, if you're ever lost, just kind of put it down. Make sure it's laying flat. You can pull out those 4 stitch markers. And I've got 1 more post left. I can see it right there. It's before my last corner. And now I want to work back away from the center. So I'm just going to grab that stitch, hold it with my finger, get my hook underneath it. There we go. So now I know my hook's under it. And get that first double crochet made, and then it's much easier to see where I'm placing my hook for the next 2. And that is all of the three-dimensional double crochets. So there's 3 double crochets worked around each post of the previous pass. So row 1, pass 1, you had 8 double crochets in total, 2 per side. You worked 3 double crochet towards the center and away from the center, and then towards the center and away from the center, and then towards the center and away from the center, towards the center and away from the center. 3 double crochet around each of those posts. Again, you're not really concerned about the chain 2 spaces. They're just a really good indicator of where you are. You skip over it, and then you find the top of that chain 3 that began the second pass. So here it is up here, 1, 2, 3. And like most things, you're going to join to the top of that 3rd chain, and that completes pass number 2, the second pass of row 1. So I'm going to pull up on that. I'm going to lay it down flat. So if I pull out those 4 stitch markers, you should sort of see what looks like almost like a little bent square, almost like the little, if you squish it, kind of push those middle stitches towards the center, you should see like the inside, should look like a square with the middle of the flat side sort of pointing in towards the center. So my stitch markers are on the chain 2 corners of first pass, and those other stitches that are creating that funny little shape like this, those are the 3-dimensional double crochets that we made working around the posts of the stitch. And that's how you get it. That is row 1, pass 1, and row 1, pass 2, or second pass. So first pass, second pass. I'm going to have a little sip of my tea. I'm using a 5.5mm hook Fonda. It's an I or a 9. Hi, Vima. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Caroline, for helping out with that. Yes, it's a 5.5mm hook. It's the same hook I've been using for all the other squares. And Lori says, this month, with the orangey yellow topaz color and this pattern, November square also ended up looking like the monthly flower of the chrysanthemum. Yes, I love that. That is so cute. Yeah, and it would make a good shag rug for a dollhouse. That's cool. Okay, this is where some people got hung up. So I want to pause now and bring extra special attention to this part. If you were changing colors, so if you finish, you join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the second pass, doesn't matter what row you're on. If you want to change colors, you snip your yarn, you fasten off right here. So you just fasten off right here and then just pause. That's if you're changing colors. If you're not changing colors, all you want to do is get down to be up on top of this stitch here. So if we look at it from the upside down, I love this. Look how cool that looks with all that wrapping around each stitch. It looks like bullion stitches. I think that's what they're called in embroidery, bullion stitches. So if you are looking at the back, sometimes it's much easier to see the stitch that you want to pay attention to. And this is the stitch that we want to end up on top of. There's a few different spots in here. Don't get hung up on the exact precise top of the stitch. You want to aim for being on top of this stitch, which is basically right here. It's where you chained 3 out of to begin the second pass. Right now, we're joined up at the top of that chain 3 that began the second pass, and we want to slip stitch down to the top of this stitch so that we can start row 2, first pass of row 2. So this is how I do it if I'm not changing colors. So again, if you are changing colors, just fasten off, and you can rejoin your yarn down here on top of that stitch. If you're not changing colors, it's no big deal. You just look for that chain 3 that you began the second pass with, grab any part of it, like a little loop, slip stitch, but not too tightly. And then, once again, sometimes it helps to look at the back of it. This is the stitch right here that we want to be on top of. Just get your hook underneath it. You can come at it from the side like this, You can grab a top of the loop right here. You can grab a piece of a loop from behind. It doesn't matter. You just want to get your hook down and be right here, pretty much in alignment with this post, this stitch. How you get there, you can either slip stitch down the side, and it won't show, it just adds a little bit of like oomph to your fluted crochet, so don't worry about visible slip stitches, not important. Or if you're changing colors, you just fasten off up here and rejoin with a slip stitch down here. You want to be more or less on top of that, what was the third chain of the chain 4 that began the previous row. Do not get hung up on a precise location. It's not that important. The mesh stitch base, which is the first pass of each row, doesn't show. You just want to make sure you have the right stitch count. So don't get hung up on where to slip your hook in. It's not that important. And I think that hung up a lot of people. Tammy's asking, where do you get the pattern? That pattern is available in the Etsy shop. And Tammy, I'm pretty sure you've got this one. If I recall, I'm pretty sure you picked it up already. Lorraine says her internet's playing up. Just back out of the stream or refresh it and come back in. It should clear itself out. A little sip of tea. All right, so we're going to start row 2. We're going to start pass 1, or the first pass of row 2. All rows, first pass, begin with a chain 4. Chain 4 counts as a double crochet, chain 1. So it's just exactly the same as the beginning of the first pass of row 1. Every first pass begins with a chain 4. Counts as double crochet, chain 1. You skip your chain 1 spaces. If you see a chain 1 space, you skip it every single time. It does help to look at the back. There's the next stitch. I want to land on top of it. I want to double crochet into the top of that stitch. It's easier to see it sometimes from looking at the back. You can also look across the side, you skip your chain 1, you find the top of the next stitch. But again, don't get hung up on placement. It's really not that important. You just want to make sure that you get the right stitch count all the way across. So skip the chain 1 space, double crochet into the top of the next double crochet, and chain 1. And this is why these stitch markers are so handy. We are at a chain 2 space. That's the corner. I know that because I put a stitch marker on it. So I take my stitch marker out and into the chain 2 corner space. Every chain 2 corner space in the first pass of every single row gets the same treatment. We work a double crochet, chain 2, that's the new corner, double crochet, and chain 1. And before you go anywhere, put that stitch marker back in the chain 2 space. It is super handy. Then you might find it easier to look at the stitches along the edge. So that's the second part of the chain 2 space. So that's a double crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet from the previous row. If that's not super obvious, you can flip it upside down and go, ah yes, there's a stitch, there's the obvious chain 1 space in between, and there's a stitch. Into the top of every double crochet, you work a double crochet and a chain 1. Skip every single chain 1 space, find the next stitch, double crochet, and chain 1. So into the top of every double crochet of every row previous. So the mesh is built onto the mesh of the previous row. So first pass is always built onto the first pass of the previous row. You work a double crochet, chain 1 in the top of every stitch. Then when you get to a chain 2 space, and it's obvious if you've got a stitch marker on it, chain 2 space gets double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. And before you do anything, put that stitch marker back in the chain 2 space. And there you go. Each side of row 2, first pass, will have 4 double crochets and 3 chain 1 spaces in between. And that's what you see between your chain 2 corners. So I hope you can see that. And there we go. Tammy's wondering if we made the pattern or, oh yeah, I invented this pattern. I'm sure there are lots of fluted versions of granny squares, but every single square in this series, while a lot of them are, you know, traditionally inspired or, you know, exist in other versions, these ones are all configured to the precise stitch counts required for the squares in this particular series. And this is, I mean, I've never seen one like this exactly building onto the mesh stitch, but there are so many patterns and stitch patterns that are sort of three-dimensional like this, where you build double crochets and stitches onto an existing grid pattern. So I am sure there are versions of this square out there. I wouldn't know what they're called, but I love this fluted three-dimensional rippling thing. And so I created a square that fit with the rest of the squares in this series because I really wanted to incorporate this nifty fluted feeling. And like I said, I love three-dimensional crochet, so I thought it would be fun to incorporate that. Yeah, so yes, I did design this. I will not take credit for coming up with the concept of it, like three-dimensional fluted crochet, but this specific design is mine. So yeah. All right, we're working across the next side now. Same thing, you've got a double crochet, a chain 1 and a double crochet. That's from the first pass of row 1. Into the top of every double crochet, we work a double crochet, chain 1, skip the chain 1 space, double crochet, chain 1 into the next stitch, and then that brings us up to the next chain 2 corner gets double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. Always pause, put that stitch marker back in to save your sanity. There we go. And double check. You should have 4 double crochets and 3 chain 1 spaces in between your chain 2 corners along that side as well. I'm going to have a sip of my tea. Check on the chat here. Catherine says you can tell we're all concentrating. Chat's gone quiet. Yes. Well, like I said, I saw the comments on the video, and you know what, gang? I'll make sure that the original tutorial is linked in the description box a little later. I don't think I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I'll make sure it's there by the time this live stream is finished. Just so if you want to see the original tutorial after you've sort of troubleshooted it with me, then you can zip through it a little faster with the original tutorial. But when I was reading through the comments, I noticed that a lot of people were having, you know, issues at different points. And I wanted to help address some of that because it is such a fun square. And like I said, this concept comes into play so often in so many other really cool crochet patterns, like the crocodile stitch or the alligator stitch, some people call it. You're basically working on a mesh and you're using different double crochets around a post. And it is just such a cool technique and it can look so nice. It can be so warm and cozy. I had to include it. So I really wanted to make sure that nobody felt left behind. I hate that feeling. I hate being excited about learning something and then feeling like it's slipping away from me or feeling like everybody else got it and like for some reason I didn't, and then I start to feel stupid. No one is stupid. We're not doubting ourselves. I just need to maybe explain it in a better way with different colors, moving a little slower, and also try to help deal with very specific issues if they come up, because I do my best to try and think of everything when we're creating a crochet tutorial, but I mean, I'm not in everybody's head, so this is why the comment section is so fantastic and helpful, because the feedback allows us to do things like this. And then nobody gets left behind. All right, here we go. So I want to continue with finishing off first pass of row 2. I'm looking for double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. That's along this side. I want to work a double crochet, chain 1 into each of those double crochets. I skip the chain 1 space. I double crochet, chain 1 into the next space, or the stitch, I'm sorry, into the stitch, not the space. That brings me up to the chain 2 corner. And then I work double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1, make sure I put my stitch marker back in because I don't want it to get lost, and I want to make sure that between my stitch markers, I have 4 double crochets and 3 chain 1 spaces. And sometimes when you get back around to that first side, it's easy to kind of go, what am I looking at here? So here we go. There is the chain 4 that began the row. That counts as a double crochet chain 1. And there's the next 2 double crochets with a chain 1 space in between. There's my corner. And this over here is my chain 2 corner. And that's the double crochet chain 1 I made that finishes that side. So before I explain that again, I'm just going to find the third chain, 1, 2, 3 of the chain 4, slip stitch to join the row. And then I'm going to lay it down flat. It's a little easier now because it's getting bigger. I take those 4 stitch markers, I pull them out. Maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. I pull them out, and now you should see 4 double crochet posts along each side, 3 chain 1 spaces along each side. So there's a chain 1 space in between each double crochet post, and my stitch markers are marking out the 4 chain 2 corners. And there we go. That is how first pass of row 2 should look. And from here we go to the second pass, which is the fluted bit. It's the vertical double crochets that we build around each one of these little posts. So I'm going to have another little sip of my tea. Golden Age Crochet is going to try this with thread. I would love to see that. That would look so pretty. Masha's been doing her squares this year with crochet thread, and they look really amazing. If you were thinking about a shag rug for a dollhouse, I think using this with crochet thread would work. It would look really cool. Everybody, welcome for if you're just jumping in and you're joining. I'm going to see if I can get to this so I can see Anne with a question here. Can anyone tell me if your square were more rounded than square? Yes. Look at this. So if I don't pull my corners out on my finished ones, and I get my 4 corners and I really tug them out, you see how that immediately squares it up? It's a lot easier to see from the back. So it's gonna bow out on the sides, and if you don't sort of do a little light blocking and pull out those 4 corners, it's gonna look very rounded. Nothing wrong at all with that. It's just the nature of the crochet. So if I didn't block out my square, so let's say I just kind of like tucked my little corners back in and pretended like I never gave it any blocking, look how nice and round that looks. So there's a rounded sort of, it looks very round if you don't pull out the 4 corners. And if you do tug out the 4 corners or give it a little bit of blocking, it starts to square up. And we're looking at the back. This is the wrong side of the square. It's just the nature of all of that 3-dimensional double crochet. It really rounds everything out. It kind of like pushes out the edges. The most important thing is to make sure you've got in between your chain 2 corners, you've got 23 stitches along each side on row 6. 23 stitches includes your double crochets and your chain 1s. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 double crochets. There'll be 11 chain 1 spaces in between. That's on each side of row 6. So 23 stitches in total between your chain 2 corners. As long as you've got that stitch count, you're golden. It doesn't matter if it's rounding out on you, because when you join them all together, that will all magically square up. It's just the nature of the square. So no worries there. But if it drives you crazy, you can block it. You can block them out a little bit. And if you're really concerned about losing track of those 4 corners, just put a little marker on them. You can put stitches markers on them, or you can just tie a little bit of brightly colored yarn through the corners just so that you don't lose track of them between now and stitching them all together. All right, here we go. Back to this. Hi, Charlie. I'm so glad so many of you were able to join us today. Kind of a last sort of impromptu live stream. It's kind of a very November-y day out there, so it's a perfect excuse to sort of sit down and hang out with everybody. But I really wanted to get to the troubleshooting on this square so that, you know, there's still half a month left if nobody wants to feel rushed or trying to, you know, get frustrated getting all the squares finished. So I was really happy to sit down and do this with everybody. Yes, there will be a live stream tomorrow morning too, Vima. allowing for the dog's behavior. Hopefully that will come to pass. But yes, we plan to do a live stream tomorrow. This one was just sort of a special. We wanted to kind of work on it, kind of like we did with the Jacob's Ladder square back in March. Okay, let's get on to second pass of row 2. Every single row is the same. First pass, second pass. First pass, second pass. First pass is the mesh stitch that establishes the base of the square. Looks like this. The mesh stitch is what we build the fluted bit on top of. The second pass is always just 3 double crochet around every single post, first going towards the center, then away from the center, and then towards the center, and away from the center. So every single row is exactly the same. It's constructed the same. Once you get the hang of it, you can start to see the pattern. It's not that confusing. I'd say the biggest issue is just knowing how to get down, like sort of slip stitch down the edge of a second pass to get back to the top of the edge of the first pass. That sort of had some people confused. And that's not a big deal. You just slip stitch down that chain 3. Just don't slip stitch very tightly. Don't worry about exposed slip stitches. They will disappear. Like you would never know looking at this that I'd been slip stitching down to get to the top of what was the mesh stitch or the first pass. So don't worry about that. And if you're changing colors, you just want to start in the top of a double crochet. I tend to say, start in the same place you fastened off so that you don't get too confused. But really, you can start anywhere you like. And once you get familiar with the pattern, you'll kind of notice that you can make allowances for yourself like that. So once you've finished the first pass, no matter what row you're on, make sure that your 4 stitch counters or stitch markers are still in those chain 2 corner spaces. And then we begin the second pass. Every second pass begins with a chain 3. That chain 3 counts as double crochet. You'll be right on top of that chain 3 that you joined in. That's the first place that you're going to work around. So just literally grab it, get your finger through that space, isolate that post, and then work 2 double crochet around it. There we go. 2 double crochet around that post. And that is the beginning of the first pass. Now your stitches are going to stand upright. Those stitches were built heading towards the middle of the square. You'll be working the next few away from the middle of the square. You're looking for the next stitch. Here it is right here. I like to grab it with my fingers and just, I get my finger right through it so I know where I'm putting my hook. And then I worry about just sort of grabbing my yarn. And we're going to double crochet so I get my hook right underneath that. Can anybody hear the dog? I don't let her in the craft room because it hasn't been puppy proofed yet, but she's scratching at the door and she's whimpering. She's such a little diva. Okay, 3 double crochet towards the center, 3 double crochet away from the center. And I'm going to have a quick sip here. So I'm just double checking the chat. I wanted to double check that I haven't missed anything. Charlie, okay, a couple people were saying that it was the blue on the blue background that really became problematic. So that's another reason I'm using bright red and green today. Hopefully it's a little easier to see. And yes, this is definitely a yarn eater. Okay. That's 3 double crochet around the next post. It was built away from the center. I'm just always looking for the next stitch. There it is. So once I've identified it, I just grab it. I'm working towards the center now. So I also say it's nice to kind of just keep changing or moving it. So I know I have to work towards the center. So I move it so that when I do grab that thing, I'm grabbing it and holding it in the direction I want to work. So I pick it up. I get my finger through it so I can really see where I'm sticking my hook. I get my hook underneath that post and then I double crochet. Once I get the first one done, I find it's easier to get the other 2 in. And that one comes towards the center. I'm looking for the next stitch to work around. So if I get lost, I just lay it down flat. I pull it out. I go, okay, I worked around this post. So this is the next post. You don't have to concern yourself with the chain 2 corners on a second pass, but I do recommend leaving those stitch markers in because it really helps you keep track of where you are. Here's the next stitch I want to use, and I'm going to be working away from the center. So I'm going to pick up that stitch, I isolate it, grab it, and I get my hook under it, and that's just a start. I make sure, oh yeah, okay, I'm through it, I'm under it, that's fine. And then I double crochet, I get that first double crochet in, and I feel like it's just easier now to get the other 2 in. Yes, Lori, I'm actually going to I'm hoping to do a live stream of pet proofing. So because I figure this might take me several hours one afternoon to pet proof, to puppy proof the whole craft room. And to be perfectly honest, this place needs a massive overhaul. I've been, you know what it's like. You get busy doing a bunch of projects and your leftovers can really pile up around you, and you kind of think, oh, I'll get to that in a minute. I'll put that away later. I'll get to that, you know, this weekend. And then all of a sudden, half a year has gone by. So this place needs an overhaul. It needs a deep clean. It needs a super rearrange. I also intend at some point in the next year to paint all of the furniture in here. And I need to puppy proof this room before she's allowed in here because I do not want her to stray in one day. We're very good about keeping the doors locked right now, but I wouldn't want her to just sort of get in here one afternoon and get into some yarn, because the last thing I want her doing is biting and swallowing yarn. I don't mind her playing with some of the crocheted little things I've made. Like I've got a crocheted pumpkin made out of that blanket yarn that she's been dragging around, but I only let her play with it when I'm supervising her because I don't want her to like chew through it and then start swallowing pieces of it. So far she hasn't. She's only got little baby teeth, but you know, I want to keep an eye on her because one of the biggest problems poor little dogs run into is that they just swallow stuff, and then you've got to take them to the vet and have an operation done to remove a blockage from their poor little bowels. So definitely want to avoid that. So pet proofing, and I think while I'm doing it, I'm just going to turn the camera on and invite you all to hang out with me for the afternoon while I do it. Not sure how that's going to go and when that's going to be, but I'm hoping to do it. It'll probably be a weekend thing. Yeah, you know, and hopefully it'll be helpful, you know, for someone, or if not, it'll just be a nice place to hang out for a few hours. Vima's got to take off. No problem. See you, Vima. Let me see here. I just want to double check. Best pet proofing is a door. Yep, it's so true, Catherine. I keep the door closed, but I don't want to be in here with the door closed all the time. I want to get a baby gate to have her be able to come to the baby gate. But I do want her to be able to come in here down the road, like, because I don't want to have to worry about every little corner of the house. So yes, pet proofing would be good. But like I say, place needs an overhaul anyway. All right. Basically, it's the same thing. After you've done 3 double crochet around one post, you're looking for the next post. Get your hook under it. Double crochet 3 times around it. You will get quicker, she says, flubbing her stitch. You will get quicker, and it will become easier. It'll become a lot easier to sort of see where you're at. I always sort of pause, pull things apart. Here's my next one. I grab it and I isolate it. I sometimes just stick my finger right through it so I can see where I'm putting my hook. 3 double crochet around there. I also like to just hang on to it while I'm double crocheting around it. I know not everybody double crochets, or I should say crochets like me, but I feel like it's just nice to be able to identify that stitch, get my fingers around it. It allows me to see where I'm putting my hook. And once I get that first double crochet in, I find it a lot easier to get the other 2 done. Here's the next one, would be this one right here. I'm going to pinch it and work 3 double crochet around it. Golden Age says she's got row 1 done in Total Micro. Looking forward to seeing it. Charlie says, I only have to puppy proof the bottom shelves. It's true. Anything I'd say about 1.5 feet off the ground, because she's a wiener and she can stretch. I want to make sure that that's all safe. But I've got a lot of stuff I made myself several crocheted rectangular baskets. I know a lot of you have seen that tutorial that we made. They're nice low baskets with little grips on either side. And I have slightly high furniture, and I keep stuff in those baskets slid under the furniture. So I need to pull those out. I need to find a new place for all of that. So I'm going to lose my undershelf storage for now, unless I block it off. I'm not sure I want to do that because our little wiener likes to tunnel, obviously. That's sort of her training. That's what she was bred for, I guess. So anything that she can climb under, she just loves, and I can't have her climbing under things. So I've got a lot of reorganizing to do as I puppy proof. So like I said, that'll be like a whole afternoon. Hello, Kimberly. Kimberly has sent a super sticker. What a sweet thing. Thank you. And it's a little puppy. Thank you, Kimberly. Hello, everybody. Hello, Keith. Hello, Becky. Yes, a puppy will definitely motivate you. I am motivated to clean up. Because I do kind of want to have her in here with me while I'm working, because I do a lot of like computer work and stuff in this room too. It's kind of a room with multiple purposes. It's also my office. So I want to have her in here with me. So get my hook underneath the next, and I can hold it and work 3 double crochet around that post. And Catherine's recommending plastic bins. I definitely want to try and get some low plastic bins that I can slide under. But I also don't want her chewing on those either. So I'm really trying to work out what I'm going to have touching the ground and what I'm not going to have touching the ground. She's a super chewer. Like she just will wrap those little teeth around anything. So we're doing a lot of correctional training right now to make sure that she chews the things we want her to chew, and not us and not furniture. Anybody who's ever had a dog knows exactly what I'm talking about. And again, this is all very new to me. The last time I had a dog I was 5, so it's been a while. This is pretty new to me. I've never really looked after a dog as an adult, so learning a lot as I go, I must say. Pausing, pulling out my stitch markers. I've come up to my last corner, and I've got one more post. You can see that right there before the fluting started. So I'm going to hop over, slip my hook under that post. That's a nice way to do it too. You can sort of get your hook under it and then hold it. Like I said, as the square gets bigger, it gets easier to grab each of those stitches. Did I go the wrong way? I feel like I've gone the wrong way. Did I miss one? I've been so busy chit-chatting with everybody. No, I don't think so. Wait, did I? Why do I feel like I did something? Oh, did I go the wrong way over here? No. Am I just losing my mind? Could be that. Could be all the sleep deprivation. Yes, I think I did it. I think I did 2 in the wrong direction. Aha, I can see. I did 2 going in the same direction over here. So that's a good time to take it out. And I did 3 double crochet around the post going in the same direction twice. And that is not what I want to do. Now, if you are not too worried about it being perfect, it's not going to show too much if you do that, but I really am trying to do this correctly for everybody. So this one was 3 double crochet heading towards the middle. Now I want to do 3 double crochet heading away from the middle. I got distracted and I did 3 double crochet around the post in the same direction back to back. So I will have temporarily lost that little bit of flutedness, and I don't want to do that. So I take it out and I do it again. And there. So that gone away from the center. Now I want to go back towards the center. So here's me kind of going, here's my next stitch, get my hook under it, and then I can work like 3 double crochet around it. And I'm going towards the center of the square. Hello, 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 hello. Everybody's talking about puppies. Yes, Catherine suggests limiting them from, limit the kind of toys away from fabric. Yeah, anything that feels like a sock is not a good idea because she'll go after your socks. But Charlie's making the joke, thinking it's funny that we can limit what she chews on. We have been doing our best to keep an eye on her and putting her back in her safe little playpen. When we can't immediately keep an eye on her, we're crate training, we're doing all the things. And so far she's been pretty good. We've got some interesting things for her to chew on. We did get her a Kong, but she's not too interested in that yet. Okay, and now I'm going to go in the right direction. So my last 3 double crochet around the post are worked in this direction, heading away from the square center. And that puts me right back where I need to be to join to the top of the chain 3 that began the second pass of row 2. There we go. So if I flatten this out and I grab my 4 corners, and I can sort of do it from anything, but if I grab those 4 corners and I pull them out, I'm just trying to get that loop out of the way so you can sort of see what I'm up to. There we go. There's the 4 main corners. Whoa, it looks like a rose, doesn't it? Those are the 4 corners of the first pass of row 2. So those mark out the 4 corners of what is the summer mesh stitch, which is the base, first pass. And there is the fluted 3-dimensional double crochet. That's 3 double crochet around each post of that pass, completed in the second pass of row 2. So there we go. It looks a little bit like a rose. That's probably just because I'm using the red. And I've tried peanut butter. She's not actually too interested in peanut butter. Could be her age. We give her the natural peanut butter. She just isn't interested in the Kong. We've got a bully stick for her and she absolutely loves that. So that keeps her busy. And she's whining at the door again. I know, baby. All right, so I'm going to change colors. So once I join with a slip stitch to the top of the chain 3 that began the second pass, doesn't matter what row I'm on because every single row is basically the same. First pass, second pass. If I want to change colors, I don't have to concern myself with slip stitching down the back edge of that chain 3 that began the fluted part. I can just fasten off, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I'm going to leave that tail out because I'm not too worried about it right now. So there's my completed row 2. So row 1, row 2, both complete. Each row consists of 2 passes. So the first pass creates the mesh stitch upon which we build the second pass, which is this fluted double crochet. And that's the back. It looks so cool. I just love all that wrapping of the double crochets around the post. Makes it look like a bunch of bullion stitches. The mister is babysitting, you guys. Like, he literally cannot be at his computer because our diva dog won't take a break. We were really hoping she'd have a nap, but that is not going to be the case. So you know what? Bright side, maybe she'll sleep all the way through the night. We're getting up like 4 times a night because she has to go out and piddle. So if I'm saying or doing crazy things, I don't even know, but if I am, I'm going to blame it on sleep deprivation. So if you hear a honking noise in the background, that's Mr. InStitches playing with the pup. So he is around, but he just can't not be at the computer today, which is why I'm also trying to help monitor the chat. So bear with me. I hope this is helpful as we go through it. I'm joining another color now, so I'm going to join a bright green or a good contrasting green color so you can see it. And if I pull up on that tail, that's where I joined at the top of the chain 3 that began the second pass of the row 2. So again, my stitch markers are around the first pass in those chain 2 corners. There's that double crochet, the vertical double crochet. You're looking at the side edge of it. That's where I joined and fastened off. If you weren't changing colors, you would just slip stitch through a few loops down the edge of that chain 3 and just try to anchor, like you want to get into the top of that that post right there where the first or that row started. But like I said, don't get hung up on where to slip stitch or how many slip stitches, or even if you are going to see slip stitches, because they won't show in the finished thing. Don't worry about it. And don't get hung up on exactly where you're trying to get your hook in here. You just want to be basically right on top in alignment, let's say, with this stitch right here. If you're joining a new color, you want to try and get your hook to be in alignment with that stitch. So I'm sticking my hook in. See, there's the chain 3. My hook's kind of behind it. I'm just sticking my hook in there. I'm going to join with a slip stitch. Don't worry if it looks messy, again, because there is so much three-dimensional work in this square, you won't see anything. And from the back, it even looks really cool. So don't worry about where or how. Just get your hook in there, join your yarn. You want to be in alignment with that stitch. Bunk, bunk. And then we begin row 3, first pass, and it's back to the mesh stitch. So we chain 4 to begin. Every first pass begins with a chain 4. That counts as a double crochet chain 1. You skip the chain 1 space. If you get lost, flip it upside down. I chained up and away from this. That's the chain 1 space in between right there. This is the next stitch, and I want to double crochet into the top of it and chain 1. And there we go. Catherine asks, if you use cotton to make a coaster, would that work? Meaning, will a glass tip over? Well, let's see. That's a pretty heavy glass. It's a little squishy. If you're, it'll probably compress. So over time it might compress and it might look a little funny. But I mean, it doesn't feel like it wants to tip over, but you know what? This has a nice low, like wide base. Let's try my other little mug. Yeah, it's a little tippy. It's a little tippy. You wouldn't want to put a wine glass on that. Probably not the best option for a coaster. Look at that, on the spot experimentation. I agree, Anna. It is the best community on the entire internet. Golden Age has done the second row. You're talking sewing thread, not just crochet thread. Do you have, please tell me you're using a microscope. Wow, that's amazing. Jessica Rabbit's in the house. Okay. I finished my double crochet. There's my chain 1. I'm skipping the next chain 1 space. I'm looking for the next double crochet, chain 1 into it. That brings me to the beloved stitch marker sitting in a chain 2 corner space. Chain 2 corner spaces, I'll get the same thing. Double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. And then before I go anywhere, I put that stitch marker back in the chain 2 space. It is so important to keep track. I can also pull it out and see what I've done so far. So here's the chain 4 that began. That creates the first double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1, and into the space. Double crochet chain 2, double crochet chain 1, and my stitch marker is back on it. So Charlie and I both have wine on the brain. I guess that's also probably because of the dogs. Someone hand me a glass of wine, quick. All right, we've got 4 double crochets. So I want to put a double crochet chain 1 in the top of each of them all the way across this side. So I'm just looking for the top of that stitch, and if I can't see it, I flip it upside down. I see it, get my hook in there. You're skipping every chain 1 space. You're just focusing on the stitches. Double crochet chain 1 in the top of each of those stitches. We are building a mesh stitch. There we go. Double crochet chain 1, double crochet chain 1 all the way across. That brings me to the next chain 2 corner. Oh, I got to remember to chain 1. Look at that. I almost didn't chain 1 after that double crochet. Into the corner, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1. Percy says, hello, I enjoy your videos and have done many. Thank you. This is only me. I have found that when you stop to congratulate milestones, which you should do, it confuses me. Do you think maybe you could finish the row? I do try. Today I'm trying to kind of manage both, Percy, so point taken. When Mr. InStitches is able to help, sometimes I'm able to do the milestone. I try to finish my thought before I do a little congratulatory thank you. Because I know it can sound a little bit confusing. Luckily, we do have a full-blown regular tutorial for this square. So today's kind of a Q&A. We're trying to kind of help troubleshoot this particular pattern. But if you feel like you've got it kind of ironed out with the Q&A, then you can always go and watch the original tutorial, which is much more succinct. There's obviously no interruptions in it because it's a filmed video. And like I said before, I'm going to make sure that's tucked into the description box as soon as today's live stream is over. But thank you for the point, Percy. I'm doing my best. We've still got some helpful information on puppies in here. It's green, Krista. I know it's probably not the best lighting, but it could also be all the blue and yellow that are making it. But all I'm going for right now is contrast so that you guys can see it. I thought that was a pretty good contrast against the red. Hello, Kimberly. Speaking of milestones, Kimberly's been a member for 31 months and says, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kimberly. Yes, good afternoon. If you're just joining us, this is a troubleshooting Q&A on our new fluted granny square. I'm using a 5.5mm hook, pair of scissors, yarn needle, 4 stitch markers, and size 4 medium weight yarn. Not that that's super important, but I am trying to kind of just keep some consistency with the other squares, just so you can see what it looks like. But I will have a link to the original tutorial in the description box as soon as today's live is wrapped up. And you can always go and watch the original one. This is just sort of to try and help keep things going. So here we go. I'm going to put my stitch marker back in the corner because I don't want to lose track of that chain 2 corner. And then I've got 4 double crochets, bunk, 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 all the way across from the previous row. I want to work a double crochet, chain 1 into each of them. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and so on, all the way across to the next chain 2 corner. Into the corner, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. And there we go. Stitch marker goes back in the corner, and I'm kind of on the home stretch, so I'm going to aim for every one of those double crochets. I'm looking at it from the back. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way across this side. Double crochet, chain 1. If I can't tell what I'm looking at along the side, I just double check by flipping it upside down. I'm looking to be on top of the stitch from the previous row. I'm back to a chain 2 corner space, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, and chain 1. Stitch marker goes back in the corner, and I've got one more double crochet stitch that needs its sort of top added, because as we grow, as the square gets bigger and bigger and bigger, your start is going to be further and further and further away from your last corner. So always just pause, pull it out if you're unsure. Each side should have 6 double crochets and 5 chain 1 spaces along it. So if you pause and you look back here, here's my corner, here's my corner. In between them, I know I need 6 double crochets and 5 chain 1 spaces. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know I need one more. If I'm confused, I flip it over and I go, okay, which of these stitches doesn't have a double crochet anchored in it? This one right here. So that tells me where I need to put my last stitch. Double crochet, chain 1. And then I'm looking for the third chain of the chain 4 that began that pass. Slip stitch to join. Grab my 4 stitch markers, pull it out, and I should have, this is really looking like a rose. My brain is telling me to make another kind of square. This looks like a rose sitting on a green kind of like a base green background. That also would be kind of a cool square. This could just be where you ended the three-dimensional work, and you could do another row of just solid double crochet or regular shell stitch, or just another row of mesh, and you could have another sort of flower-centered square. That's really kind of neat. Might have to do that. All right. I'm going to... How's the lighting, everybody? It's getting darker. I'm just wondering if I should sort of change the lighting around. Is everybody able to see what I'm doing still? I'm going to switch now to the second pass of row 3. So first pass is done. So I've done the complete mesh base. Now I want to work the double crochets onto each of those posts all the way around. And lighting is good. Light is good. Okay, all right, light's good. We're going to keep going then. I'm going to chain 3. Chain 3 counts as a double crochet. And now the first set of stitches in every second pass are always built around the double crochet, or in this case, the chain 3 that you joined in the top of. You're going to work around that, and you're always heading back towards the center of the square. So you might want to do this. Find it, get your hook underneath it. You might want to actually hold it and like wrap your yarn, get your hook underneath it. However you want to do that. There's no right or wrong way. Sometimes it's nice to like, and then I find holding it's easier once I get that first double crochet around. Remember, the chain 3 that begins the second pass counts as a double crochet. So the first post you're working around, you're only working 2 double crochet around it. All right, so that's the first one. Here's the next post that I'm looking for, and I'm working away so I can turn the square, and I'm telling myself that I'm working away from the center. But again, you can also just get your hook on. See, now this is where I messed myself up. If I do this, I'm going to be going in the wrong direction. This is why I want to turn my square, and I find it's sometimes helpful just to pinch the next stitch so that I know I'm going in the right direction, because I have to come at it from the other side in order to have my stitches go in the other direction. So I can maybe get my thumb under there, make sure that I'm highlighting that post in any way that makes it comfortable for me to get my hook underneath that post. Wow. Oh, it's this little tail. That's what's confusing me. Come here. So this is the stitch I want to work around. I want to work away from the center. I'm going to pinch it with my thumb and forefinger. I'm going to get my finger right through that. This is the post I'm working around. So I'm going to get my hook under that post using my finger as a guide. I get that first double crochet in, and now it's much easier to get the other 2 in. And it's the first stitch going in the other direction for this row. Lighting is still good. Everybody feels okay. It's a little shadow, but not bad, says Krista. Well, there's always a little bit of a shadow, I guess, if you have lighting. Good lighting. Ah, yeah, a rose on a trellis. I like that. Could top stitch aim vibes and add leaves? Absolutely. Maybe a new wall hanging. I want to do, I made that little tiny wreath. I want to do a little mini Christmas wreath coming soon. All right, so I've gone away from the center. I know that I finished those last few double crochet away because my last double crochet is at the edge. So here's my next stitch. Get that little tail out of the way. This is my next stitch. I want to work back towards it. I'm going to grab it, get my finger underneath it. That's my guide. Stick my hook underneath it and work 3 double crochet around it. And now I'm going back towards the center. So that was going towards the center. Now I want to go away from the center, but I want to find the next post. There it is here. I want to make sure I'm going away from the center. So I turn my work just to remind me. I'm going to grab it. There's my finger. My finger is my guide. I'm going to stick my hook underneath it, get that first double crochet in, and that makes it easier to see the next 2. Hop over the chain 2 space, looking at my next stitch. I need to work back towards the center, so I'm just going to grab that stitch. Finger is my guide. Hook goes underneath it. Get that first double crochet in, and the next 2 follow easily. Here's the next one. I want to work away, so I'm going to grab it from the other direction and spin it. So now I'm holding my square so that I'm working away from the center. My finger is my guide. I'm going to poke my hook right through with my finger and 3 double crochet around that. And then you just sort of alternate. Back and forth, back and forth. Here's the next one. I want to work towards the center. I'm going to grab it, so I turn it so that I can grab it. Get my yarn out of the way. Grab it. Finger is my guide. Tighten up my yarn. The hook follows my finger. Here's the next one. I'm working away from the center. I'm going to grab it. Finger is my guide. Wow, she still hasn't gone down for a nap. Mr. InStitches is, I bought her this big stuffed flamingo because I saw it and I had to have it. It's longer than she is. The guy at the pet store told me they have one that's 6 feet long, so I think I'll be getting that one just because she seems to like things that are way bigger than her. And it has a squeaker and it's got a crunchy sound in it, and it's really firmly made. I love it. Anyways, it's her favorite thing, and it makes that silly honking sound, which we all think is funny. But she likes it. It gets her to come running wherever she is. Here's the next one. And I'm just kind of constantly changing the angle that I grab it, because I'm always going first towards the center and then away from the center, and towards the center and away from the center. And if I'm not talking with everybody like I am right now, it's actually kind of easy to keep track of where I am, you know, in, out, in, out. This creates the fluted activity. I'm looking for the next stitch. If I get lost, I just kind of look at where the last stitches landed, and they should be right at the edge because I was working away. I jump over the chain 2 space. Here's the next one. I want to work back towards the center, so when I grab it, I'm kind of grabbing it so that I work this direction. So I pick it up. I'm going to grab that. My finger becomes the guide, and I'm just sticking my hook right underneath it with my finger, and 3 double crochet. I think little dogs have big dog syndrome. They think they're bigger than they are. There's the next stitch. I want to work away, so I can either turn the square or just keep in mind the direction in which I need to grab it. So here's the stitch. I'm going to pick it up. Grab the next one. 3 double crochet around the post. I'm going in the other direction, and back and forth and back and forth. And this is how every single row is the same. I'm going to turn it. Finger is my guide. I'm going away from the center. And in the original tutorial, I feel like I kind of, I feel like I was able to explain the sort of turn your square, you know, identify the next stitch, work 3 double crochet around that post. I feel like I was able to explain that fairly decently. I think it was the getting from the end of a second pass to the beginning of the next first pass. I think that may have been, could have used a little more attention. And maybe the color was a little bit difficult to see in some places, but I feel like feel like those were the primary things. So if anybody does have any specific questions about it, I'd love to help answer them. I'm only going to do the first 3 rows of this square because I feel like those are the first 3 rows are the most pattern establishing. Rows 4, 5, and 6 are identical to row 3, and it's just basically your square getting larger and larger after that. Lori says, after this round, could you switch to a solid granny pattern in neutral color to make this look like a rose? Yes, absolutely. I don't know if I want to, you know what, Lori, I think I might create a slightly different square just for fun, and I might do a slightly different video. I don't want to confuse anybody by adding, like changing the pattern of this square right now. I'd rather, like if anybody's really here looking for help or trying to use this video as sort of like help down the road, I want it to be consistent with the original pattern. But like I said, when I sort of saw that coming together, I thought, oh, that might look really neat. So I might make up a different, I'll just create this, but with a solid background past the 2nd row, just to sort of see what it looks like, or maybe past the 3rd row. And if I like the way it looks, I'll put out an actual tutorial on it, because I think that might look really, really neat. And I like the idea of having a rose. This does look more like a rose than the Irish rose does. The Irish rose is a neat 3-dimensional square, but I feel like this kind of has that fluted look that a rose does. I might also be able to make it look a little bit more, like I might be able to make it look a little more fluted. So I'm going to fiddle with the pattern and see what I can come up with, because as so often happens on our live streams, I'll be in the middle of something and get an idea for something else. But that's because you guys are so creative and so inspirational that when you ask a question or I'm sort of have to think about what I'm saying, I'll suddenly see it from a different perspective and poof, there's a whole new pattern staring me in the face. Hello, Josie. Welcome to the family. Thank you for joining. So I'm just finishing off the 2nd pass here of row 3. I'm alternating the direction in which I work my 3 double crochet around the post. If I get lost, I just put it down. Pull out all 4 of my stitch markers, make sure that I haven't missed anything. If I'm extra concerned, I just look back here, make sure I haven't missed anything. There's my next stitch. My last stitch was towards the center, so now I want to work away from the center. So I'll turn it in the other direction, get my hook underneath that post. It does, Lori. It does look like the Tudor rose. And I'm back to my last post. So I'm just going to grab it, highlight it, get my hook underneath it, work 3 double crochet around it. And I'm back to the chain 3 that began that pass. So I'm going to slip stitch into the top of it. There we go. And because I'm not going to go any further, I'm going to fasten off. Actually, you know what? I might not fasten off. I might just leave that there for now. But if I were to fasten off to change colors, I would snip my yarn and fasten off and leave it right there. If I'm not fastening off and I want to keep going, I want to identify the top of that chain 3 that I just joined in, which is this thing right here. And all I want to do is get down to be on top of this stitch. So that's the stitch that began the first pass of the row. I just want to get down the edge of this thing. And I do that by just grabbing any old part, a loop, and slip stitching. Doesn't matter from what angle. I just don't want to do it very tightly. I can do it once, I can do it twice. And then I want to get my hook into the top of that stitch. However, from any angle, doesn't matter. As long as I can get it into what looks like the right alignment with that stitch, doesn't matter where I put my hook. Don't get hung up on it. I'm going to slip stitch right there. And now I'm at the bottom. So I've slip stitched down the side of that chain 3. Doesn't have to be don't worry about it if you see those stitches, because you will not see them when the whole thing is done. But most importantly, if I look at the back, I am now right here at the top of this stitch. I'm ready to start my next row with a chain 4, because I'm going to work the first pass of the next row, which is always the mesh stitch. Chain 4 counts as a double crochet chain 1, and then double crochet chain 1 into each of the top of the next double crochet stitches all the way across. When you get to a chain 2 space, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, chain 1, put your hook or your stitch marker back in that chain 2, and then it's double crochet chain 1 on top of every single one of those stitches. You create your mesh stitch in the first pass, you join with a slip stitch in that third chain of the chain 4, and then you want to start your second pass. You chain 3, that becomes the first double crochet that sits upright, and then you start working double crochets around each of the posts of all those double crochets that you created in the first pass. And that is basically it. I'm going to have a sip of my water now. Golden Age is still struggling with the thread. I'm not surprised. That is super tiny. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Does anyone have any questions about this particular pattern before I end today's stream? If you're coming back later and you're watching the repeat, feel free to leave questions in the comment section, either on this Q&A video or even on the original tutorial. I'm doing my best to catch up with the comments as I get to them. And like I said, I'll do my best to answer them. I feel like I answered the main kind of issues, I hope I did anyway, that popped up in the comments section on the original tutorial, which I will link in the description box as soon as I'm finished with today's live stream. I'm really, really grateful to you all for being able to hang out with us and spend a little time on a Sunday afternoon. This, Catherine, yes, this particular pattern can keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It doesn't have a top out, so you can make this square as large as you want. But like I say, it's a real yarn eater. So the bigger you make it, make sure you've got like a lot of yarn ready to go. All right. Okay. One more. What do you call this kind of stitch or pattern? Into All Truth asks. This is the fluted granny square. It's fluted because the three-dimensional part is kind of rippled like a fluted edge. But this is just three-dimensional crochet. Working crochet stitches onto a mesh base is a foundational concept for a lot of individual stitch patterns, like crocodile stitch, like leaf stitch, like a lot of really fancy border edges. So the names of stitches will differ, but the concept of working crochet stitches around the posts of an existing mesh stitch is, I really don't know if that specifically has a name, but it's a concept that gets used in a lot of different stitch patterns. So like I said, I'll link to the original tutorial of our fluted granny square in the description box, but you may run into this concept a lot in your crochet journey as you are told, you know, hey, you're working this particular row of stitches and now you're working a second pass over the same row. That is a commonality in this kind of three-dimensional crochet that's built onto a mesh base. So you're going to run into it, and it's cool. It's a really cool way to do a little extra crochet. Golden Age says, do you really have to alternate going your 3 towards and then back, or can you just do 3 rounds around the post regular? So if you do that, it's all going to be going in the same direction. So it will not undulate, it won't ripple or flute like this. It'll always kind of be going in the same direction, but it'll get like the last stitch we pulled up to the top of the next stitch and then down and then up and then down and then up and then down. So you're going to get something that kind of looks like this. So it will not undulate or ripple, but it might, because you're only dealing with 3 double crochets, it won't be as stark, but it will kind of look like this, or perhaps like this if you're left-handed. I agree, Charlie. It was really nice to have everybody here and have a chat. I'm really glad you guys were able to hang out with for a little while. So, like I said, if you've got questions, leave them in the description box, or I should say the comment section down below, either on this one or the previous tutorial. I'll make sure that the appropriate tutorial is linked, and the entire playlist for this year's calendar blanket is down there as well. And we will see you guys tomorrow, so long as the dog gives us a break. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a safe and crafty evening. And like I said, we'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.